Hello everybody, this is Connor at BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Shadowverse Evolve deck profile. This time we're going to be looking at the Armed Dragon deck, updated with plenty of new cards in BP10. As one of the anime archetypes, it of course did receive a new gold and a bunch of new bronzes and silvers, similar to the rest. However, unlike most of the others, this deck also got 3 new legendaries, all of which are the new advanced type of card. So it really shifts this deck in a new direction and gives it a lot of top end that it was previously missing. Fixes a lot of the problems that were holding it back. And it's actually one of the, I think, pretty decent competitors this set. Pretty solid deck. Before we take a look at the list, of course, as always, this is meant to be a starting point. This is a deck I have not gotten to experiment a whole lot with, and generally not as much of a play style that I'm as big of a fan of. But I think the list here pretty much sends the deck in the direction of what it wants to be doing. Sort of gets you to the strong points of the deck, some of the numbers and some of the more tech cards in the deck might have better slots, just depending on what you're playing against. But of course, test it out, see how it goes. Yeah, well, you can jump into the list here. Of course, you are going to see a lot of the old armed cards. None of the anime archetypes got a ton of new cards. It's like 4 or so each. So we're still playing the old main shell. We still have Armor Burst, Draconic Armor, Hammer, Dragonute, Draconic Smash, Draconeer, and of course Lævateinn Dragon. With the usual Blazing Breath, Dragon Oracle, and some new cards here and there, Ayala, and of course the new armed cards. So pretty straightforward deck. And once we look at what the cards here are doing, it's a actually really linear strategy, I think, just with a sort of lot of redundancy in how you're going to get there. The part where this deck starts to look kind of crazy is in the Evolved deck. Lævateinn Dragon was already a bit unique in that he had 4 different Evolved cards spread between sets 3 and 4. And of course this was before the double-sided cards, so 4 different evolved forms that took up 4 separate slots in your evolved deck if you wanted to play them all. And now he has 3 new forms, so Lævateinn Dragon now has 7 total different cards that can go into your evolved deck, and as a result, some of those are taking up half of our Evo deck slots here, which leaves the rest of our Evo line looking very thin, but it is what we have to work with, and the payoffs are generally worth it, so, that's just something you got to deal with. If you want to check out the deck log page for this deck, you can use the code in the bottom right. That's going to be 41PV4, or, as always, you can use the link in the description. This deck has a shockingly low curve for a Dragoncraft deck. 25 of our cards cost 2 or less, and then 5 3-drops. So we do have the usual 10 cards that I like above 4, or 4 and higher. No 4-drops, but lots of 1s and 2s, so we get some really good early turns where we're always going to have things to play. And then we scale pretty well into the mid and late game. And it basically just becomes a game of looping Lævateinn Dragon forms as much as possible, as soon as possible. We have 18 followers and 22 spells, which actually seems kind of crazy for a deck that you would think is follower-based, with wanting to use the weapons and beef up your followers' defense and things like that. But this deck actually kind of leans in a completely different direction, where we play a lot of removal, and we play our main actual card in the deck is Dual Rage, which is a spell that's going to enable all of our cool advanced plays. So taking a look at these cards in particular, first up, Angelic Snipe. I think it's been in almost every deck I've shown so far for this set, and as always, there's just a lot of really strong 1-drops in the game right now. Being able to keep them off your back, especially in a deck that needs to set up, is just really important. We do, of course, need a lot of the weapons. We've got to get a lot of our cards need 3 or 5 armed cards in our cemetery, so we're going to need a few turns to get all that set up, and we really don't want to be getting run over by aggro decks while we're trying to do that, so 2 Angelic Snipes just to give us a lot of 1-cost removal in the early game. 3 copies of Armor Burst. This is another 1-cost removal spell, but it's a bit unique. You have to select an armed follower on your field and an enemy follower on the field. You put your armed follower into your EX area, and then deal 3 damage to the enemy follower, and summon a Draconic Weapon token. So the Draconic Weapon is a 1-cost amulet that can engage and bury itself to give a Dragoncraft follower on your field +1 defense and the armed trait. So this is a removal spell that requires you to have a body on board in order to be 3 damage removal, but it is 3 damage for only 1 play point, and it's going to give you a weapon, which is really good. We do need weapons, and a lot of the time that we're playing this, getting a weapon back on our board is going to help us on the following turn when we replay the thing that we've put into EX area. In the early game, if you have to, you can use this to loop some of your strong fanfare effects, either to get card advantage or burn your opponent out. Swiftblade deals 3 to your opponent's leader on fanfare, so being able to loop that can give you some end-game burn damage. Gallant and Hammer Dragonute are both going to dig you toward your pieces that you need to actually set up your big late-game boards, so really good for looping fanfares like that. However, in the late game, it is also really good for putting our Storm body back into our EX area to be able to push it up again on the next turn and kind of protect it between turns, since it can just attack immediately with Storm anyway. Next up, we have 3 copies of Blazing Breath. This is, of course, here for the same reason as Angelic Snipe. 1-cost, quick timing, deal 2 damage. However, Blazing Breath is going to be a bit better for us since it scales better into the late game. Once we're at Overflow, so 7 or more play points, it can deal 4 damage, which is going to take out just a handful of like mid-game cards. 4 is not a like huge number right now, but 3-drop 3/3s that evo into 4/4s will always be a thing, and there's a couple other cards like Prudent General and Milteo that are going to keep popping up repeatedly through the mid and late game in their respective decks, that a 1 play point removal spell for can be quite good. Our last 1-cost is another spell, putting us at 11 total spells in our 1-cost lineup. This is Draconic Armor. This was the first armed card introduced in set 2. Generally one of the weaker ones in previous iterations of the deck, since it just gives you weapons. But now that we need a lot of weapons, this is going to be one of our cheapest ways to get them. So for 1 play point, you get a Draconic Weapon, and then if you're at Overflow, so again 7 or more play points, you get 2 instead. In the early game, this is a card that A, it's going to give you a weapon, B, it's going to give you an armed card in your cemetery, and then once you get into the later turns of the game, especially on like 7, 8, 9 play points, when you're doing your like 2nd and 3rd turns of Dual Rage, you're going to be running out of weapons because you're going to be burning through them pretty quickly. This is just 1 play point to get you 2 more in play, which can feed a lot of your effects. Moving into our 2-drops, we get to some actual followers. We have Gallant Dragonute. This is a new follower that we got in set 10. 2-cost 2/2. Fanfare, look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You can reveal an armed card from among them and add it to your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. If there are at least 3 armed cards in your cemetery, summon a Draconic Weapon token and recover 1 play point. So this can grab any armed card in the deck. It can grab followers or spells, which it only gets to look at top 2, but we play so many armed cards, you're pretty much always going to find something, hopefully. If you miss, you miss, but this can be a pretty good way to just keep neutral hand while developing board. And once you get 3 armed cards in your cemetery, so moving into the mid game, you're going to get a Draconic Weapon, which can help you build toward your sort of end game boards, and you're going to recover a play point. In the early turns, that play point is not going to matter as much, though it might let you hold up a removal spell, but in the mid and late game turns, it can actually let you sort of sneak a free Gallant Dragonute into turns where you're going to be doing bigger plays as well. Or we'll look at a play later where you can set up a beta form, or dual, Lævateinn Dragon dual mode beta? Yeah, crazy names. and cheat this into play off of its effects to hold up removal on like bigger, more threatening boards. So the play point's not huge, but it can matter here and there. Our next 2-drop is very similar. 2-drop 2/2 Hammer Dragonute. This one's from set 3. Fanfare, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal an armed spell from among them and add it to your hand. Put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this one lets you look at 4 instead of just 2. However, it is limited to only grabbing spells. This is mostly fine though, since the main thing we're going to be digging for with either of these cards is Dual Rage. That is the card that we absolutely have to see for our game plan to actually matter. So being able to dig for it, being able to dig 4 can be a lot better at helping you find it. Whereas Gallant Dragonute is going to be more a... this is more of a like actual turn 2 play to get your Dual Rage set up. Gallant is more of a play where you can weave it in where the extra play point, once you have 3 already in Cemetery, is going to matter and help you do extra things or hold up removal. Hammer Dragonute, however, does evolve for 1 play point into a 3/3 that deals 2 damage to each enemy leader. This is not particularly important for our strategy, but it can be a bit of burn damage when you need it, so we just play 1. You're usually not going to be evolving this guy, but again, when it does come up, it comes up, so we play 1 copy just in case you need that 2 damage. The rest of our 2-drops are more spells, so we have Draconic Smash. This is a 2-cost quick spell, deal 3 damage to an enemy follower, summon a Draconic Weapon. Pretty simple. It's removal, keeps us safe, good against things like sword. 3 damage for 2 play points is pretty decent rate, and it gives us a weapon, which is going to help us set up for our mid and late game at the same time as we're protecting ourselves. So, good card. Next we have Dragon Oracle, Dragoncraft staple. It pretty much is just here to ramp you. If you play this on turn 2, you can get into some later turns a bit better. I think generally you'd want to play this on 3, just so you can play a 2-drop, and then play this and a 1-drop on 3, and then move into like Ayala for 5, and then you can potentially get into your late game from that point. But one of the issues with ramping in this deck is actually that since you need 3 and 5 armed cards in your Cemetery, essentially skipping like your turns 2 and 3, since you're just putting a Wormkin spell in your discard on turn 2, makes it actually hard to like have your Cemetery thresholds by the time you actually get to your big cards. Is kind of the issue. If you do play this on 2, especially going first, it means you'll get into your 3-drop Evos, especially Swiftblade Dragonute, which if you do hit that, and you go like turn 1 Draconic Armor, turn 2 Oracle, hope you're not playing at Sword, because you are going to be taking a beating for doing that. But then once you get into your 4 play point turn 3, Swiftblade, Evo, summon another dude, and you can hit your 3 in discard for your 5 play point turn, which might let you do a little more stuff. But in general, we're playing Dragon. Ramp is good. Ramp is going to let us do our big things before our opponent. Even if we don't quite get to do them on curve, having more play points is still, in general, going to let us do more powerful plays. Our last 2-cost spell is a removal spell. Force of the Dragonute. Of course, as if we need more removal spells. But really, we do. Decks like Sword are super powerful this set, and we really need to not be dying until we get to our board wipes and big giant threats that can actually handle them. So this is quick timing, 2-cost, deal 3 to an enemy follower, same as our Draconic Smash, but this one is draw a card, then discard a card. This card not being armed trait kind of matters compared to Draconic Smash, so being a draw ditch is going to be extra ways for us to dig toward Dual Rage, but B, it's going to be a way to discard an armed card to still sort of help us fuel our 3 and 5 Cemetery requirements. Moving into 3-drops, we have Draconeer, Knuckle Dragon, from set 3, of course. 3-drop 3/3, Fanfare, summon a Draconic Weapon token. Previously, this was actually a really big part of why Draconeer was powerful. You could use his own Draconic Weapon to make him a 3-4 and then a 4-5 when he evolved, which means he survived Surefire Bullet. It made him a lot harder to remove as a turn 3 play. Now, since we don't really want to be sending our weapons into our followers to buff their stats as much, since we need them for effects, Draconeer is a little less good, but he's still good enough to play. We play 2 base form and 1 evo, so he evolves for 1 play point into a 4-4. On evolve, you deal 2 damage to an enemy follower. If you have another armed follower other than himself on your field, you get to deal 4. Because of the way this deck's curve works out, if your 2-drop gets answered, it might actually be a little difficult for you to actually hit the 4 damage on curve. But against the fast decks that are threatening you, shooting something for 2 and then swinging 4 at another body should probably be fine. Otherwise, this guy's kind of more of a mid-game card. You can actually stick other bodies and him in the same turn. So, only a 2-1 line. It's a bit lighter than you would expect, and a bit lighter than Dragon decks have run in the past, even outside of Armed. But we just have other better followers that do more toward our game plan now. The 4 damage is pretty nice, though, into the mid-game. As I said, when it's going to be a little easier to stick, like, play a 2-drop and then Draconeer, or play a 3-drop and then Draconeer. Since the 4 damage is going to scale pretty nicely into, like, other decks turn 5, turn 6 plays. Our new 3-drop, and arguably better 3-drop, Swiftblade Dragonute, is a 3-cost 3-3. Fanfare if there are at least 3 armed cards in your cemetery, summon a Draconic Weapon token, and deal 3 damage to each enemy leader. That essentially means that this guy has Storm, which is kind of crazy to be like a novice trooper that gives you a Draconic Weapon and then also evolves. So really good card. Really good synergy with Armor Burst since you can loop that Fanfare effect. But his Evo is even better. So on evolve, you get a 4-4. On evolve, search your deck for an armed follower that costs 2 or less. Summon it, then shuffle, summon a Draconic Weapon token. So when you evolve this, even if you didn't meet the 3 cemetery requirement for the Fanfare effect, you can play this guy on 3 going second, 4 play points going first. Evo him, get a cost 2 or lower, and then also get a weapon. So bringing out a Hammer Dragonute or Gallant Dragonute with this is going to let you essentially build a board on turn 3 or 4 and also dig for your dual rage. So you're progressing sort of both sides of your game plan, pressuring your opponent in the now and setting up for big turns in the later. If you have the 3 cemetery requirement, your Gallant Dragonute is going to also give you another weapon and recover the play point, which means for on an empty board, you can play this guy, burn your opponent, make a weapon, Evo, summon Gallant, make a weapon, Gallant effect, make a weapon. So you get 3 weapons, 2 dudes. It's a full board for 5 play points, kind of. Or for, not 5 play points, full board for 4 play points. 3 since you're refunding 1, which is kind of crazy. You get to hold up removal past that or do whatever else. Kind of leads to some really powerful turns. Otherwise, still digging toward dual rage makes this a pretty threatening early game card. So definitely a strong one and worth playing 2 evos for. No 4-drops, so your turn 4 is generally either going to be playing 2 cards or like if you're going first, your turn 4 is like Draconeer Evo or Swiftblade Evo, hopefully. And then moving into our 5-drops, this is kind of where we start moving into just our late game plays. Ayala is pretty much just here to skip 6 play points if you have to go first. So 5-drop 2-2. Fanfare, choose 1. Option 1 is to increase your max play points by 1 and then recover 2 play points. Recovering 2 play points here is pretty important. Spending 5 to get a 2-2 and pass is pretty awful. So this at least gives you the option to play a removal spell on the same turn as Ayala. Or if you do somehow stick this on like an empty board state, you can use those 2 play points to play Oracle and untap on like, 8 next turn? Which is pretty sick actually. But generally that'll be like play Ayala and then play a Draconic Smash or something like that. Just to sort of keep yourself kind of alive while you build into your bigger, better turns at 7 play points. If you go second, this is not quite as important, since you can't do your big dual rage turn on 6 going second. But since you need to be able to evolve Lævateinn Dragon a lot of the time, you'll need the 7th play point if you're going first, and Ayala lets you skip straight ahead to that. If you're already at overflow when you play Ayala, you can choose, instead of ramping, to summon a Devoted Dragon token, which is a 5-cost 6/6 ward. And as long as you have Ayala on your field, it doesn't take ability damage. And then she'll also heal you too if you choose to summon the Devoted Dragon. This is mostly just an option against Earthright, in particular. I guess Earthright and vampires. Less so vampires, but still kind of. Getting a ward that can't take ability damage as long as your 2/2 lives is really hard for a lot of decks to break through and have Storm in the same turn. Things like Riley and Vanya generally, like, you play them and their effects that deal damage clear the ward so that they can swing. But if they have to put effects into Ayala first to kill her, then a lot of times they won't have more effects left over to kill the Devoted Dragon. And both Vanya and Riley, while they do trade with Devoted Dragon, it means they're dying, so you pretty effectively blocked the Storm damage. So it can give you a reasonable out into matchups like that. Unfortunately, into Sword, if they like play Prudent General and make 2 Steelclads and then just Evo a Ralmia, sorry bud, you're still eating the Ralmia because Devoted Dragon is going to take the Steelclad damage. Only stops ability damage, not followers sending into it. So, slightly problematic there. Our other 5-drop is Jerva of Draconic Mail. I am really torn on this card. I hate the fanfare. So this is a 5-drop, 5/5 fanfare. Discard your hand, which basically means you're in top deck mode for the rest of the game. If you are not playing this to kill your opponent, you better either A, have a damn good plan to end the game, or B, be in a position where you have to play this to not die. Because discarding your hand is essentially a death sentence if you don't have a way to get through the last couple turns after that. However, if you don't want to have to discard your hand, you can play Conflagration. But this card is strong enough when it's good, that I think it's still probably worth playing over Conflagration. You should be very careful when you play it. The other effect here is at the start of your end phase, deal 5 damage to each other follower on the field, as both players' fields, and draw a card. So if you play this, you discard your hand, and then draw a card at end step, and then you'll draw a card to start your next turn. So you'll have 2 cards to work with. Unfortunately, they're just the top 2 cards of your deck, so they might not be good. And in a deck with 25 cards that cost 2 or less, the odds of them being low impact is unfortunately high. Because even if it's a 2-drop that can like dig you toward more cards, you may not have the play points to play them, dig more cards, and then also do the big thing in the same turn. But Jerva does evolve for 1 play point. It stays a 5/5 and has the same effect at end step. The only change is that now instead of dealing 5 to each other follower, you're dealing 5 to follower and leader. So you're burning your opponent 5. This is better. It means you can just play Jerva and evolve it as pseudo 5 storm damage. It does also mean that Jerva can represent a threat across multiple turns that your opponent has to answer. But the biggest thing here, and I think where Jerva really shines, is as a sort of bridge turn between your 2 storm turns. So often this deck will play Lævateinn Dragon dual form Gamma, attack with Storm, and then use Armor Burst to put Gamma back into the EX area. If you do that, it doesn't matter that you're discarding your hand. You have a source of Storm damage that you're guaranteed to still be able to play after you discard your hand, which can end the game. So it basically gives you a board wipe and 5 extra damage to bridge into your Gamma actually killing your opponent. I think that's sort of where Jerva really shines. But if you have to, and sometimes decks like Sword or Vampires or whatever that are rushing you really hard and making wide boards, they'll force you to play the Jerva early. In those cases, sometimes it's just your best interest to put your Draconic weapons into your Jorva, make it as big as possible, and just hope your opponent can't answer like a 5-7 or a 5-8 or even a 5-9. That board wipes them, 5's their face. You get 2 cards, and if they can't answer your 5-9, or 5 whatever it is, then you're attacking them for 5 and burning them 5 more at the next end phase. So that's 15 damage across 2 turns. Jerva can single-handedly end games when left unanswered. So it is sometimes just an angle where you board wipe your opponent and hope they can't answer it. But otherwise, good bridge later in the game, so I think it has some merit here. Moving into our 6 drops, we have Lævateinn Dragon, the sort of face of the armed deck. 6 cost 5/5. Evolves for 1 into any evolved follower with Lævateinn Dragon in its name. This is pretty unique. I think it's the only card in the game, even in JP as of now, that has multiple different cards it can evolve into that are actual physical different cards and not just two sides of the same card. So it has 4 different modes. We only play 1 of them in this deck. Attack, Defense, and Blast form are unfortunately a bit underwhelming. The regular form is kind of also underwhelming, but has good enough synergy with the rest of the deck that it is worth playing here. The normal form is a 6/6 with Assail, which is quite good in the context of this deck. On evolve, summon a Draconic weapon and recover 2 play points. So this is pretty much just going to help us build our board of Draconic weapons. You get 1 of them. You're going to need 2, so hopefully you already have at least 1 on board, and this is just giving you an extra one. Most of the time, you'll want 2 in addition to Lævateinn, and then let Lævateinn make the 3rd one, just because of how a lot of these effects we're about to look at work. But having a sail is pretty cool. You get to swing Lævateinn at something, even untapped, the same turn you evolve it. And as long as you're not trading, the next card that we're going to look at sacks our Lævateinn Dragon off anyway. So, you know, even if you send this into a 5/5, doesn't matter that you're a 6/1. You're going to get a new card after that regardless. The 2 play points also have a lot of synergy with the rest of the cards in the deck, where they'll basically let you use activated abilities on the advanced forms, which are the new ones we'll look at, and also play Armor Burst in the same turn to set up powerful later turns. So, Dual Rage, the main reason that we really like Lævateinn here. 6 cost spell. Search your deck for an armed follower, reveal it, add it to your hand, then shuffle. You may summon an armed follower from your hand. The search is going to be really situational. If you don't have a Lævateinn Dragon in your hand, you're obviously searching Lævateinn Dragon. If you do already have a Lævateinn Dragon in your hand, it might be better to search a Swiftblade Dragonute or a Draconeer or something like that for a future turn. And then just summon the Lævateinn, since you don't have to summon the one that you search. But you will pretty much always be summoning Lævateinn Dragon. Then, the next text on the card, the activate ability. You can banish this card from your cemetery, select a Lævateinn Dragon and 2 cards named Draconic Weapon on your field, destroy all 3 of those, and then you may summon an advanced follower with dual form in its name from your evolve deck. There are 3 different advanced dual form Lævateinn Dragons, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. Alpha is kind of bad, unfortunately, but Beta and Gamma are both pretty powerful in their own unique scenarios. Gamma is our main win condition, but sometimes we'll have to go into Beta just as a way to stall a little longer, or stabilize on board a bit. So we'll look at Beta first. Beta is a 6 cost 6/6 ward. Fanfare, deal 2 damage to each enemy follower on the field. Give your leader +4 defense. Activate ability, you can pay 1 and bury a Draconic Weapon to draw a card, and then summon an armed follower that costs 3 or less from your hand. Abilities like this are why we enjoy both the Draconic Weapon off of Lævateinn's Evolve and the 2 play points recovered, because it means that if we can evolve and then sack to get one of these out, we have the extra play point, and we have the extra Draconic Weapon already ready to go. Generally, if you're summoning something off of this, it's going to be Swiftblade Dragonute to get the 3 burn damage on your opponent. And if you didn't evolve in the same turn, if you just played Lævateinn with like 7 play points or whatever, and then sacked it to get dual form beta out, I guess it would take 8 play points or 7 with an evo point. You could summon the Swiftblade and then evolve it to summon something else and try to sort of build a board while clearing your opponent. This is pretty fringe as to when it comes up. It's mostly like this heals you and can clear a board of like tokens like bats or something, and they give you a ward to protect yourself, hopefully. But it is really just a stabilization tool that you're not going to be going into every game. The main card that we like here is Lævateinn Dragon Dual Form Gamma. So this is also a 6-cost 6/6. While there are at least 5 armed cards in your cemetery, this follower has Storm. Please keep track of those. The first time that you ever summon a dual form Gamma and realize you only have 4 armed cards in your cemetery, you will feel like an absolute idiot, and you will make sure to never do that again. Because you will have essentially wasted 50% of your potential to end the game. But Storm on a 6/6, incredibly powerful. Obviously, we've seen 6 damage Storms like Riley and Vanya be really good already. So this is just more 6 damage Storm. The activated ability on this one is pay 1, bury a Draconic weapon, deal 2 damage to each enemy follower on the field, give this follower +2/+2. This is not once per turn. So in turns where you just have a lot of extra weapons and a lot of extra play points, you know, you can buff this to an 8/8, 10/10, 12/12, etc. And if you do play this, you know, if you have the extra play points from Lævateinn's Evo and a weapon, you make this an 8/8, hit your opponent for 8. If they somehow cannot clear an 8/8, which, you know, it's a lot of stats. If they can't clear it, you can use the ability more on the next turn. Go up to 10 attack, 12 attack, whatever. You'll have plenty of play points to do so. So you can, like, play the 1-cost spell that makes 2 weapons and then just eat them both, hit your opponent for 12. That ends the game. 8 + 12, that's 20. And you'll probably have some other damage as well along the way. So, very threatening card that essentially needs an immediate response. But some of the even more powerful plays you can do with it here. If you evolve into normal form Lævateinn Dragon, get your weapon, get your 2 play points, sack, go into Gamma, you'll have 2 extra play points if you do this on curve. So 6 going second, 7 going first. Pay 1, eat a weapon, hit your opponent for 8 to their board. And then use your last play point to play Armor Burst, deal 3 to something, put Gamma back in your EX area, and you'll make another weapon. Since advanced cards aren't evolved cards, or unlike evolved cards rather, they can actually exist in the EX area. They still can't exist in your hand, but armor bursting, you know, if you armor bursted an evolved Forte, you would just get a regular Forte in your EX area, you'd have to evolve it again. If you armor burst a dual form Gamma, it's just going to be a dual form Gamma in your EX area, and you can just push it up as a 6-cost 6/6 Storm on the next turn. This basically gives you protection from one turn to the next of your Storm body. It means that you'll get the Storm without having to find a second copy of Dual Rage, and without having to get enough extra weapons in play to sack a Lævateinn and summon out another dual form Gamma from your Evolve deck. And in addition, as I said earlier, this is sort of where the Jerva turns come into play. If you can turn, we'll say turn 6 going second, get the Gamma out, hit your opponent for 8, put it back in your EX area. Empty board state, so they do whatever. They try to make a board, you go into Jerva, discard your hand, Evo it, you clear their board, and 5 their face. So they've now taken 13 damage across 2 turns. And then on 8 play points, you can push your dual form Gamma back up, eat the weapon that you made off Armor Burst, and hit your opponent for 8 more damage, so that's 21. Plus just whatever other damage you had anywhere in between. And of course, if they didn't clear Jerva, they're just dead regardless. That's like 10 more damage on top of everything. So, yeah, really strong card, really threatening, really forces your opponent to find ways to stay safe from it. But it's quite difficult, because if they put out a single big ward, the Lævateinn Dragon's Assail can just clear the ward before you go into Gamma, or can at least like hit it, and then the 2 damage to each enemy follower off of Gamma's activated ability. Activate that once or twice, If you activate it twice and deal 4 to everything, that's going to clear most like wide boards of wards, like guard form golems and stuff. So it is pretty hard to stay safe from this thing. The biggest thing to keep in mind is Rime Wind from Rune. That can give you a pretty bad day, because again, this is not an evolved follower, it is an advanced follower, so Rime Wind will still hit it. Looking at the deck as a whole, as I said, it's a pretty linear deck where you kind of just have early game cards that are either A, removal spells, B, dig for dual rage, or C, make weapons, or some combination of those things. And then just get into dual rage, go into your top end is kind of the whole strategy here. The pros are that you do have a ton of pieces of removal. You have Snipe, Burst, Blazing Breath, you have Draconic Smash, you have Force of the Dragonute, you have Draconeer's Evo, Swift Blade can swing into something while also building you board and searching for stuff. And then moving into the late game, you know, Jerva is a board wipe, Lævateinn has a sail, and both Beta and Gamma can deal 2 damage to everything, either once or multiple times. So lots of removal. It should be pretty hard for most decks to stick boards against you early at the very least. Though you do have to draw enough of those pieces of removal to hold back something like Sword. And the other big benefit here is that because we're Dragon, we can get into these powerful turn, you know, 6. I say 6 going second, 7 going first. That's the number of play points you need. It might not necessarily be the turn you're doing it on in Dragon. Since you might be doing that turn 5 or 6 instead, as long as you can get enough Cemetery going on. And that's one of the things where, like, Beta might be what you go into if you just don't have the Cemetery for Gamma yet to sort of stall over a turn, especially if you already have a second copy of Dual Rage ready for the Gamma after you set up Beta. So the ramp can really let you hit those powerful turns earlier than your opponent's ready for them. Some of the cons of the deck, however, it can be slow in the early turns of the game, especially because it is a setup deck. And all these setup decks sort of have that similar issue. If you do things like play a Draconic Armor on turn 1 and then one of the followers on turn 2 or a Dragon Oracle on turn 2, you might get run over pretty quick just because of the way you drew. Thankfully, the low curve means you shouldn't clog on high-end cards. You should have something to do. It's just whether it's enough interaction to sort of make it through that early game. Setting up the Draconic weapons repeatedly can also become difficult, since you do need 2 of them for Dual Rage, and then a 3rd one if you want to activate the effect. Any turns after that, if you have to play another Dual Rage to set something up, it can be a bit difficult to get 2 more weapons into play, since you'll have to spend play points to get those weapons out. And sometimes it can be hard to have the play points to both make weapons and then also do something with them in the same turn. So you might have scenarios where your turn 6 is Dual Rage, and then your turn 7 is just like a recovery turn to get more weapons built up, and then turn 8 is the second Dual Rage turn. And in those scenarios, if your middle turn is too weak, your opponent might be able to sort of swing the tide of the game back in their favor. And lastly, it is a deck that is killing primarily through storm damage because of Gamma. So despite having powerful bodies, it is still weak to interaction. As I said, Rime Wind is really painful. Things like Acolyte's Light that just destroy outright are also pretty problematic for you. Destroy or banish outright are pretty problematic for you. So in those matchups, you may have to consider leaning a bit heavier into Swift Blade, Hammer Dragonute, and Jerva to try to get enough burn damage to where you don't have to rely as much on the Storm. Here is the deck as a whole one more time. I know there's a couple other cards these lists play sometimes. Either like Zelganea pops up here and there as just another like mid-game body. I know Forte pops up here and there in the list. I really don't know how you fit Forte though, because I think most of the mid to late game cards here are mandatory. Force of the Dragonute doesn't always show up. The Angelic Snipes don't always show up. I've sort of leaned a bit heavier into removal because I do think decks like Sword are really powerful this format and something that you just have to build around, because if you can't beat Sword, you really just can't win reasonable events in this format, I think, unfortunately. So just sort of something that you have to take into consideration. If you're in like a local meta that doesn't have sword, you can probably fit some more stuff like Forte, maybe even some more just like setup cards that aren't pure removal, things that give you a bit more gas to keep going. The Evo deck, unfortunately, is just super tight. There's not much you can do about fixing this. I've even seen some decks play the Lævateinn Dragon Blast mode in addition to this lineup, which is just crazy, like 6 Lævateinn Dragon Evos. I don't think Blast is quite worth it. It's a board wipe based on the number of armed followers you have already in play. I think it's a little too hard to stick a reasonable number of followers. I think you're probably like jamming your Lævateinn on an empty board most of the time, so I'm not a huge fan of it, but something you can consider if you want. Otherwise, if you want to check out the deck log page, copy and edit, make some changes for yourself, 4-1PV4, or you can use the link in the description. Thank you for watching. As I said, this is a deck that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I know other people are. It's more of a playstyle thing, not that I think this deck is bad. This is actually the deck I played against in top 4 of the Grand Showdown in Mexico City. And it's funny. I was really scared of the deck just because it has a lot of board clear potential, but it did end up being one of those things where, you know, I worried about the slow start. My opponent had all 3 of the 1-cost spell that makes a weapon. So we move into like turn 4 and his board is just 4 draconic weapons and I'm just beating him down with like a bunch of bodies and the game ended like immediately basically. So things like that can happen, unfortunately. Kind of the weakness of the deck, but I do think this is a powerful deck overall. Obviously it got him to the top 4, so it was winning a lot of games on the way there. And I think these big storm bodies that can be hard to answer, sometimes you just catch your opponent off guard. They don't have a way to kill an 8/8, and you just win because of it. So, or they don't even have a way to kill, like, let's say a 5/7, 5/8 untapped Jerva. Hard to answer sometimes, especially if it's untapped. So, sometimes you just win off of those things. And this is a deck that can really sort of play into those scenarios and capitalize on them. But yeah, we'll have some more decks out soon. I got, what, Forest and Haven are the 2 classes I haven't talked about out of this set yet, so those will be coming up next. Let me know if there's anything else you want to see. Otherwise, there should be some videos on the screen for you now, and I'll see you next time.